The 2025 NFL Draft is full of some very interesting quarterback prospects. I don't think there's going to be a consensus top 1, top 5 quarterbacks in this class because there's just such a variety of skill sets. It's maybe not the most talented class, but I still think that there's going to be a couple guys that go very, very high in this class. So it is going to make for a lot of intrigue at the top of the draft. Today, we're going to be going over my top 10 quarterbacks as of right now for the 2025 NFL Draft. Things still very much subject to change. The year isn't over yet. Bowl games, those kind of things could absolutely change my evaluations of these guys as we get closer to the draft. But in November, let's go ahead and dive into my top 10 quarterbacks, starting at number 10 with Quinn Ewers. You can see on the screen as well my scouting system. The percentages here are basically the total amount of points that they were able to get for each of these traits. For example, Quinn Ewers has 65% of the possible points that he could get for accuracy. Each of these categories have other subcategories within them as well. For example, arm talent has both velocity and your ability to push the ball down the field. Accuracy includes deep accuracy, medium accuracy, short accuracy, for example, as well. So this is just kind of a basic scouting system that I use. We're going to look at all the quarterbacks through that same lens here. So starting with Ewers at number 10, his accuracy is a major concern for me, and that's going to be kind of where we start with him. He is in his 4th year, started at Ohio State, ended up transferring to Texas. He was one of the highest recruits ever coming out of Texas, but ended up going to Ohio State, transferred to Texas after 1 year. He's somebody that at 6'2", 210 pounds, he has a lot of the physical traits that you look for. His arm talent is probably his best feature. He can throw it with velocity. He can get the ball down the field very effectively as well. But there's a lot that I think Quinn Ewers is still really not great at when it comes to projecting him to the NFL. I definitely have him lower than most draft analysts are going to have, but this quarterback class in particular is going to be one where there's a wide range of opinions. For me, Ewers just lacks a lot of kind of NFL-ready tools that I look for. His accuracy, especially deep down the field, is really rough. He had A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. This year he has, Isaiah Bond. All 3 of those guys are really, really good wide receivers at the college level, and I don't think he's really been able to unlock any of those guys. His ability to go through progressions and create out of structure, I don't think is particularly impressive. His pocket management, I do think there are times he runs into sacks. I don't think he's particularly mobile. There's a lot of question marks that I have, and you can kind of see that in his advanced stats as well. His normal stats don't look bad. He has missed a couple games due to injury, but 1,800 yards, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's not terrible, but you look at his turnover-worthy plays versus, big-time throws. He has 7 big-time throws to 11 turnover-worthy plays. That in particular, that game against Georgia, he had 7 turnover-worthy plays, had a 30 PFF grade in that game. So PFF's not everything by any means, but you watch the tape, he did not look good in that performance. I think most of the big games this year, he hasn't looked particularly great against, high levels of competition. So I do have some concern about Ewers. I don't think he'll return to school because of Arch Manning. Maybe he transfers, but I think most likely he will be in the NFL. And, he's somebody that I have a 4th to a 5th round grade on. So I'm definitely going to be lower on Ewers. And to me, I just don't really see him as much more than just a developmental guy with good arm strength. I think there's a ton of big-time question marks that he needs to answer if he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. So at number 10, much lower than probably most people are going to have him, but I just wasn't a huge fan of Quinn Ewers' film. Moving to number 9, we have Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. Senior, 6'2", 225 pounds. Through 10 games this year has a 70.8 completion percentage, 3,400 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. A lot of people do like Jackson Dart, and I can see some of the appeal with him. He is somebody that has really good stats against really high-level competition in the SEC. I do think that his arm talent is pretty good. He's definitely NFL caliber, and I think the accuracy in general is also pretty good as well. He can throw with anticipation. That was one of my favorite things about his game, but the biggest drawback for me with Jackson Dart, and the reason I have a 4th to a 5th round grade on him, is I just think with the offense he is in with Lane Kiffin, he is not asked to read the field at all. Pretty much every single throw is a predetermined read, whether it's a curl route, a screen, a just designed rollout pass to the guy running a corner route. Whatever it is, I think he pretty much has 1 to 2 guys that he even has the chance to throw the football to. And most of the time, if it's not to one of those 2 guys, he's either running it, throwing it in the dirt. Like half the time, Ole Miss doesn't even have guys running on the backside. And I think that's just going to be such a major difference from what the NFL would ask him to do. And I think at the very least, you're going to have to give him time to learn how to read NFL defenses. You simply just cannot run a one read system in the NFL. Defenses are too good. Coordinators will pick up on tendencies. It may seem harsh to give him 29% on progressions, but he just is not asked to do it. Pretty much every single read, whether it's a deep ball downfield or a screen, is predetermined by Lane Kiffin. And I think Kiffin likes that because it feels like he has ultimate control of his offense, and Dart does execute the system pretty well. I just don't think it is going to translate to the NFL, and he is going to need a ton of time to learn how to read defenses. He's not the most mobile guy. I don't think he goes off script particularly well either because, again, everything is predetermined for him. So when that doesn't work, he oftentimes isn't the best improviser, the best creator. I think there are things to work with, no doubt about it, but right now I think he is just really far away from being able to see the field, especially early on in the NFL, because he is going to have to entirely learn how to read defenses. He just didn't do it pretty much at all at Ole Miss. So that's why I have a 4th to a 5th round grade on him. Dart is just someone I think has a long way to go before he can really be a starter in the NFL or, anything more than really just a developmental backup. So that's why I have that day 3 grade on him. At number 8, I have Will Howard, the Ohio State quarterback. He's a redshirt senior, played at Kansas State for 4 years before transferring to Ohio State. He's well-built, 6'4", 235 pounds, kind of ideally what you look for in a big-time quarterback. He has some decent stats, isn't asked to throw a ton, but 72.9 completion percentage, 2,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. The thing with Will Howard is I do not think he is going to be a superstar NFL quarterback, a great NFL quarterback. I'm not sure he even has the traits to really be a starter in the NFL, but I think he can be a very capable backup that sticks around in the NFL for a while. And I think that there is value to that. I have a 4th to a 5th round grade on him. As you can see, I don't think he does anything exceptionally. I don't think he has a great arm. I think his accuracy is solid. He doesn't push the ball down the field very often. And, I do think his deep accuracy is a little bit inconsistent at times. He doesn't really go through progression super often. Now, that's partially because Ohio State's wide receivers are so good that they win very consistently, and so he pretty much is throwing to the first read, but he also is kind of a first read and run type of quarterback because he is pretty good with his legs. He's not making a lot of guys miss out in the open field, but he is tough to tackle. At 235 pounds, he's very effective in short yardage situations. They run him on read options and QB powers and QB sneaks especially, and he is pretty effective in that regard. He generally does make pretty good decisions, and he can, do a pretty good job taking care of the football, but I do think he needs to anticipate routes better. That's something that we have consistently seen with Ohio State quarterbacks is that they just need to see the guy open before throwing it, and that just doesn't work in the NFL level because, when they're open, that window closes very, very quickly in the NFL, and I think that's something Howard definitely needs to continue to improve on. But overall, I think Howard is a guy that can stick around the NFL. He isn't super traitsy, but he's a guy that is a fifth-year player. He's seen a lot in college football. He's played in the Big 12 and now the Big 10, seen a lot of starting experience. He's just somebody that I think you could add to a backup room. He could turn into a very quality backup quarterback and be in the NFL for 7 or 8 years and be in that role for a long time. So I think there is value to that. It's a day 3 type of player, but I do like Will Howard in a class where I think I tend to shoot for upside. Howard is a guy that I think is relatively steady, and you kind of know what you're getting from him at this point in the NFL. Next up, we have Carson Beck, and he has definitely not had the season that he was hoping for. He's kind of the consensus quarterback 1 for the most part coming into the season because he did look pretty good. I had him in my top 10 quarterbacks last year. He ended up going back to school, and there was a lot of thought that on a really good Georgia team, he was going to have a really good year. He never was kind of the traitsiest quarterback or the highest potential guy, but a lot of people thought he could be a Kirk Cousins, a Geno Smith level guy that comes into the league, is effective and can operate an offense really well to the point that you can get your team to the playoffs and be very competitive. But Beck has just not had a good year. You look at his stats, 19 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. He's putting the ball in harm's way so much. And you look at his game against Alabama, he had 6 turnover-worthy plays. Against Florida, he had 4 turnover-worthy plays. He just is putting the ball in harm's way far too often, has a 4.3 turnover-worthy play percentage, 18 total, and 15 big-time throws. He's just he is definitely not making good decisions for Georgia this year. That's something that didn't show up as much for sure in 2023, so it does feel like he's just putting a lot of pressure on himself. He's forcing things. There is talent in there. He's got a decent arm. He is not the most mobile guy, but he can make things work when plays break down. He can go through his reads and anticipate and go through progressions. I don't think he's really like terrible in any one area right now. It's just he is not putting things together on a consistent basis. Sometimes he's inaccurate. Sometimes he's not going through his progression and he's forcing balls. It's just he really hasn't put a lot together this year. And I think that he is somebody that doesn't have the highest end traits. And that means that he's going to be somewhat limited in what he can do in the NFL. I still think there is a world where Beck comes into the league, maybe sits a year, and then is able to become a Daniel Jones level player. And I know that's not super exciting, but if you took Daniel Jones in the 3rd or 4th round, you probably would be okay with that. And I think that's kind of where I'm at with Carson Beck. At 6'4", 220 pounds, he's well built. He's somebody that, has seen a lot playing in the SEC for Georgia. He's been a good player for them. But I do think that this year he has just tried to do too much. Maybe you get a coach that doesn't ask him to do too much, operates the offense kind of like he did last year, where he was just kind of the point guard distributor type. I think if he gets back to that, he can end up being a NFL starter, maybe not a high-end one, but I do think he has that potential in him. I still have a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him. I think he has really plummeted his stock quite a bit this year, and I don't expect him to probably be a 1st round pick because of it. So I think he is definitely going to fall a bit more than originally projected at the very least, but for me, quarterback 7, I don't think he is going to be one of the premier guys in this draft class and definitely has had a pretty rough season. At number 6, we have Kadekumnick, who has been a big riser for me. Coming into the season, really did not think that he was going to be kind of on the NFL draft radar, but he's really put up a nice season. He's a true junior, 6'2", 210 pounds in 10 games. 2,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and I think he definitely is flashing some of the really good talent that he has. His arm talent is really good. He can throw off platform, he can throw from the far hash on out routes. He definitely has an NFL caliber arm, and that's something that, is very exciting to see. He's also very mobile. In the game against Pitt, he ran for the game-winning touchdown for like 40 yards. He absolutely can make plays with his legs when things break down, and that is just immensely helpful for offenses to keep the chains moving, to continue to threaten defenses with the quarterback's legs. That just makes them think. And so, that is definitely good traits to have. I think he's still learning how to read defenses, how to go through progressions. Those kinds of things definitely aren't quite where you would hope for being a guy that you're maybe hoping to take as a developmental starter type. But I think there's plenty of opportunity to think that he can get better in those areas as a guy that, is just a true junior. I think he definitely has room to grow. His accuracy, his pocket management are fine. They're things that I think he can continue to get better at as well. The upsides with Klubnik, he takes good care of the football. He has good traits. And the things that he needs to continue to improve at, it's not like there's major deficiencies in any one area of his game. He basically just needs to learn how to read defenses a little bit more effectively, how to go off script and be a creator, how to manage the pocket and throw with more accuracy. I don't think any of those things are debilitating for him. And so I could absolutely see Klubnik turning into a pretty good pro. I have a 2nd to a 3rd round grade on him. I would take him sometime on day 2 as maybe a developmental starter type. Likely not going to start day 1. He probably shouldn't, but I think that you could turn to him 2 years down the road and definitely have a guy that maybe has the traits to turn into a quality NFL starter, which I think is pretty valuable in this class, where I think there's going to be a wide range of opinions on these guys. I think Klubnik could be taken a lot higher than some people expect. Up next, we have one that is definitely going to ruffle some feathers. I have Shedeur Sanders at number 5 here. The senior out of Colorado, 6'2", 215 pounds. And a lot of people really like Shedeur Sanders. And I think there's a very good chance he ends up being a top 10 pick. For me personally, I'm just not there with his game. You look at his stats, he does have really good numbers. 72.9 completion percentage, 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. The biggest thing with Shedeur Sanders are a couple of things. First and foremost, I do not think his arm talent is very good. I don't think he's a great athlete. I think the physical gifts are pretty limiting for Shedeur Sanders. I think, for a top 10 pick, he's definitely not got the NFL superstar traits that you tend to see. And there are guys that can be really good in the NFL without a absolute bazooka for an arm, but it just makes the margin for error much, much tighter. And I think Sanders would have, a bottom half of the league, maybe even a bottom 10 arm of any quarterback starting in the NFL. And so that's just not a great baseline to start. I also don't think he's particularly athletic. For being Deion Sanders' kid, I think, he can take off and, pick up yards if the defense is playing man coverage and, he sees there's no spy and he can take off. But I don't think he's a real weapon with his legs. And for all of the talk about Shedeur Sanders, about how bad his offensive line is, I think his pocket management is something that is still a major issue for him as well. His offensive line is terrible, don't get me wrong, but it's one of those things where a lot of it is self-inflicted as well. He'll step into pressure. He'll, bail from clean pockets and, allow a looper to come around and smack him as he's outside of the pocket. And, yes, his offensive line does just get beat immediately sometimes, but he also is self-inflicting a lot of those things by holding onto the ball too long, running into pressure, and just generally not managing the pocket as effectively as he could. Now, the reason Shedeur Sanders is still considered, a top quarterback in this class by many is because he does have some really interesting traits. His decision making is really, really good. He does not put the ball in harm's way really ever. And his ability to limit turnovers, 7 interceptions, honestly, that's kind of harsh on how well he's taking care of the football this year. He does a really, really good job anticipating routes, throwing with accuracy, keeping guys, out of bad situations. He protects his wide receivers. I think that he does a really good job operating the offense. Now, margins get smaller in the NFL. Those are tough things to win with, and you can do it. You look at a guy like Joe Burrow and, Tom Brady. Those guys were really, really good because of their anticipation, their decision-making, their accuracy. You can win and be a really, really good quarterback in the NFL because of that. But I personally don't see those as special traits in Shedeur Sanders. I think he's good at them, and especially in this class, he's probably the best at maybe all 3 of those things. But I just don't think he is one of those can't-miss special prospects when it comes to those traits that really allow him to overcome some of his major deficiencies in his just physical talent. And that's just not even getting into the character piece of things. And for me personally, everybody's going to have their own opinion on it. I haven't spoken to the guy, but for me personally, I don't like my quarterback publicly throwing his offensive line under the bus. I don't like, him talking about transfers that transferred away and him talking on Twitter about them. For me personally, I want a quarterback that's going to bring the team together, not be divisive. And so that is a major red flag for me in Shedeur Sanders. That's why I have the red flag on him. Every team and every scout, everybody watching the draft is going to have their own interpretation of that situation. For me, I'm just probably not willing to take Shedeur Sanders for the lack of physical talent and also the leadership style that he kind of shows, where it's going to take to get Shedeur Sanders. I have a 2nd round grade on him. I would take him in the 2nd round. Absolutely. I would maybe take him late round 1. But if he's going to be a top 10 pick, I personally am probably out on Shedeur Sanders. And, hopefully you can see why that's the case. It is partially the leadership stuff, but I also think there are limitations with him on the field that do scare me as kind of a football evaluator as well. At number 4, we have Jalen Milroe, and he's kind of the complete opposite of Shedeur Sanders. He is somebody that has every physical trait you could possibly want, basically, but he is not super pro ready at some of the more nuanced things like anticipation, accuracy, timing, these types of things. Milroe is somebody that, coming into this year, he really seemed like a long shot to be in the conversation of a 1st round pick because the physical traits were absolutely there, but he just was not playing the quarterback position at a very high level besides just being a true athlete. But at 6'2", 225 pounds, he has had a really good year. He has 2,200 yards throwing the football, 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He's also an incredibly dynamic runner. And I think, that is something that absolutely needs to be in the conversation with him. I mean, he has 120% on the mobility here. He basically was just too good to only get 100% at these things because he is like a Lamar Jackson type of athlete at the quarterback position. I think, In a lot of ways, he reminds me of Justin Fields, who is a special athlete at the position. He was really effective running the football in the NFL, but he struggled with a lot of the nuanced things with reading out defenses, knowing where to go with the football, being able to anticipate, throws over the middle of the field. I think Milroe has been much better at that than he was last year at Alabama, but there's still major question marks in that regard. And so having him at number 4 here, he's a guy that has big time question marks. He could be really bad in the NFL, but the high-end traits are really exciting as well. He needs to be more accurate. He needs to be more precise where throwing the football, protecting his guys, knowing where to throw it with anticipation and timing, going through progressions, hitting backside reads on a consistent basis. His ability to create, though, be an improviser, create things with his legs, especially in the red zone, is really impressive. His arm talent is off the charts. He's got really good velocity. This guy has the physical traits. It's just about putting everything together. In a situation where he has to start right away, I think it's going to be pretty rough. But if you can let him sit, let him develop, I think he could turn into a really exciting player with the right coaching staff and the right infrastructure around him. I do think it's going to take a pretty special location for him to really truly succeed in the NFL, but the high-end traits are absolutely enticing enough that I would take him in the second round. I think he is probably going to be a first-round pick because of how enticing the traits are. I absolutely see why people like Jalen Milroe. For me personally, the number 4 quarterback in this class. Up next at number 3, somebody that I did not expect to like anywhere near this much, but he has had a really good season. Drew Aller out of Penn State, kind of the prototypical old school type of size, 6'5", 235 pounds. Kind of reminds me of Ben Roethlisberger back there in the pocket. He's just incredibly difficult to bring down. He'll shrug off defensive ends and stay up, create things off script. So, the physical traits are really impressive. His arm talent, he's got a rocket launcher of an arm. I really do think he probably has the best arm in this class. There are a lot of nuances that I think he can continue to improve on as well, but I think he is a little bit more polished than Jalen Milroe. He doesn't have anywhere close to the mobility of him. He's a decent runner, but he's somebody that is more winning with power than true athleticism and speed like Milroe. But I think when it comes to his accuracy, his ability to go through progressions, hit backside digs, anticipate routes coming open, make good decisions with the football in his hand, I do like Drew Aller, and I think he has shown a lot of growth. He's still incredibly young, and that's something that's pretty exciting in this quarterback class as well. Got a lot of 4th-year guys, 5th-year guys. Aller, a true junior, just been in college for 3 years. Last year at Penn State wasn't great, but this year at his true junior season, he's really developed pretty nicely. And I think that, if he continues on this trajectory of continuing to improve and get better each year, Penn State doesn't ask him to do a ton, but he has had an effective season. I think he's taking care of the football pretty well. And he has absolutely shown flashes in pretty much every area that you want to see. It's about just consistently putting that together in order for him to really truly be a very good quarterback in the NFL level. I think he's somebody that would definitely benefit from sitting. I think pretty much every single one of these guys, maybe besides one, would really benefit from sitting. Aller has NFL caliber traits. He's got a good arm. He's got great size. And he's somebody that I could definitely see getting into the first round conversation if he's not already there, because I think NFL scouts are really going to love his size, his intangibles, the things he brings to the table. I think Aller still has a ways to go before he can really kind of be considered a great prospect or great young quarterback in the NFL or anything, but I do like some of the traits that he brings to the table. And I see kind of the way in which he can become a quality NFL starter, which isn't always the case for a lot of these guys in this pretty weak quarterback class. At number 2, we have Cam Ward out of Miami, Florida. He's probably most people's quarterback 1 at this point. He's a senior. He's had an incredible journey. Went to Incarnate Word originally, transferred to Washington State, was there for a couple of years, and then transferred to Miami this year. He has a lot of fun physical traits as well. At 6'2", 223 pounds, he's well built. He is, definitely in the Heisman conversation. Had a very productive year, 3,400 yards, 32 touchdowns, 6 interceptions through 10 games. And he's somebody that I do see a lot of really exciting things from. His arm talent is off the charts. He is definitely he's got a rocket launcher arm. He can be a very mobile guy. So the physical traits are absolutely there. As a rusher, he's dangerous. He can make guys miss in the open field. He's not Jalen Milroe type of athletic, but he's a very athletic quarterback. His accuracy is pretty good, generally speaking, as well. He can go off script and definitely can make wow plays. And he makes those pretty consistently every single week, where he is just flipping the ball to the running back as he's being taken down, chucking a ball 40 yards downfield. He consistently makes wow plays, but he also makes some really bad decisions, and he does put the ball in harm's way a lot. I watched him at Washington State last year because a lot of people thought he might declare for the draft. I'm glad he went to Miami and transferred and was able to get, some high competition against him in the ACC. I think he's been much better than he kind of showed at Washington State. I think he has a better supporting cast, but the same problems still kind of persist. And you kind of know what you're getting. It's a high variance guy where he is going to have big time throws. He's going to be able to create for your offense with his legs and with his arm. But he's also going to put your offense in bad situations as well when he's, running around trying to make a play and then he gets strip sacked from behind, or when he just chucks a ball into triple coverage because he has that much confidence in his arm. He's just one of those guys that believes he can pretty much do anything on the football field. And a lot of times it works out for him. And that's why he is a playmaker and a really intriguing prospect. But he's also going to be a very high variance type of player in the NFL. And I think some coaches are not going to want that as much as maybe the NFL draft community does, because he's fun to watch. He's a very exciting player. But I think on a down-to-down consistency, there is a little bit that is left to be desired. I still do really like Cam Ward, though. I think he can be a really good quarterback in the NFL, maybe a franchise-level guy. I don't see probably any of the quarterbacks in this class being a really good elite NFL quarterback, but Ward, I think, has a lot of the traits that you look for of a guy that can be kind of a leader of a team. And for teams like the Raiders or the Giants that just need some playmaking and somebody fun to watch at the quarterback position, I think Ward makes a lot of sense. And then at number 1, this is definitely going to be controversial, and I get that. I have Garrett Nussmeier at number 1, and that's even with all of the games down the stretch where he's kind of cooled off a bit. And I get it. He definitely has had some rough moments over the past couple of weeks, and there's definitely things that he needs to clean up on. I do not have him as a, bona fide top 10 pick that I would absolutely entrust my franchise with. But when looking at this holistically, he's somebody that I think has all of the traits that I would look for in my NFL quarterback. He just needs to rein things in a little bit. And you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks in this class, but I think one thing that I really like about Garrett Nussmeier is his anticipation, his ability to go through progressions, manage the pocket really effectively. A lot of those smaller things that you don't always think of that the best quarterbacks have. The reason that Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen are really successful is because they're able to throw with anticipation, be able to manage the pocket effectively, know when and where to escape, go through progressions. And there's things, especially with Garrett Nussmeier, his decision-making needs to be better. He has to put the ball in harm's way less often. And, that absolutely has to be the case. But I think when you look at the other guys in this class, Nussmeier has kind of the best blend to me of accuracy, arm strength, and kind of the intangibles, the pocket mobility, the progression, the anticipation that do make good NFL quarterbacks. And so he's somebody I am taking a massive risk having as my quarterback 1. He might not even declare for the draft. As a, redshirt junior, he's somebody that is a first-year starter, 6'2", 200 pounds. There's still opportunities for him to get better, to put up more stats. But at the same time, there's probably not going to be a worse quarterback class for him to be a part of where maybe he can start climbing towards the top. And he needs to have a good end of the season because you look at his games most recently. Texas A&M was not a good game. He had 3 interceptions in that one. Alabama had 2 interceptions in that game. There's definitely things he needs to clean up. But overall, I do really like what Garrett Nussmeier has shown on film. And I think that there are great opportunities for him if he goes to the right system to really turn into a guy that could be the face of a franchise. As a first-year starter, I think he has shown some really, really good things against the best competition that you could possibly have in college football. So he's somebody that, I don't think is going to be a popular QB1 pick. He may have been a little bit more so earlier in the season, but the games I saw of him, I saw a guy that has the traits that could really turn into an NFL quarterback. And he's somebody that I do think could take that next step, really understand when and where he can fit the football in and when he can't, and be able to kind of rein that in and turn into a really interesting player in the NFL. So let me know your thoughts on the top 10 prospects. Watched other guys as well. Curtis Rourke is somebody who I watched that I like, just missed the cut. Dylan Gabriel, somebody who doesn't have great NFL size or arm talent. He's dealt with major injuries. He missed this list. Riley Leonard, he's an interesting player out of Notre Dame. His rushing ability is really interesting, but don't love his ability to anticipate routes and really kind of be a commander of that offense in a point guard type of role. I think those guys just missed the list. But there's going to be a ton of diversity of opinion when it comes to this quarterback class. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Who are your top 10 quarterbacks? Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. If you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button down below. We'll have tons more NFL draft content coming your way. Mock drafts, player reports, top 10 rankings just like this. So please hit that subscribe button. While you're down there, hit the like button as well. Both of those things just truly do support the channel, and I would appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.